What is communication really? What are we doing here in Toastmasters? And why am I standing up here giving my number 10 speech again? Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and distinguished guests. Today I'm going to talk about my second pass through the Competent Communication Manual, where it started, where it has brought me to, and a few of the things that I've learned along the way. I started the second Competent Communication Manual almost by accident. It was when I was area governor, and I was trying to convince a club to do manual speeches. And so I did this by giving a speech. Now, it seemed to me that if I'm trying to convince someone to use manual speeches and giving a speech, there ought to be a manual speech. And I couldn't think of an advanced speech to fit this in, and so I thought, well, I'll just fit it into another competent communication speech. And that started me on my themed competent communication kick. So every speech in the second competent communication manual I've given has had the theme of communication and Toastmasters. And in the various speeches, in my icebreaker, I talked about what brought me to Toastmasters and why I came. I talked about the various dimensions of speaking that the Competent Communication Manual takes you through. Vocal variety, using gestures, organization, all of these things. And yet, I find myself on my second number 10 speech, like Odysseus returning to Ithaca, returning to the icebreaker speech. The icebreaker speech says, tell us about yourself. And so what is communication really? Communication is about that icebreaker speech, about doing it again and again until you get that right. And what does getting that right mean? What does telling you about myself entail? It means stripping away all of the masks that I wear that are barriers between who I am and who you are. Martin Buber calls this the I-thou relationship. Because when our relationship consists of one mask talking to another mask, then we're simply an object talking to another object. But an I-thou relationship is when our true self, our inner self, is holding communion with the inner self of another. And so what public speaking is ultimately about is not an I-thou relationship with another person, but an I-thou relationship with many people. And this is something which is difficult to achieve. Having gone through the communication manual a second time, I find that I'm in need of a third, and a fourth, and a fifth. And one of these days, I might get it right. But I'm going to keep working at it. And along the way, I've had some amazing experiences in trying to strip away some of those masks. I talked about breaking the fourth wall. The fourth wall being this imaginary barrier that we have right here, in which we're somehow too afraid to cross. And so breaking through that is one way of stripping out a barrier between who I am and who you are. The other is finding the courage to reveal more of what is inside, because it is really difficult to share that, even with another person, let alone a group like this. And I want to talk about something which has impacted me very recently, and just put this whole thing into focus. For the past month or 6 weeks, we've been starting a Toastmasters Club at the Soledad Correctional Facility. And yesterday, I had a typical Toastmasters day. At 6:45 a.m., I was Toastmaster of the day at the Monterey Peninsula Club. And at 4 in the afternoon, I was driving to Soledad Prison to be the general evaluator for their meeting. Now, picture this. You're in a room of 28 inmates, many of whom are serving 25 years to life. There are no guards. There's nobody else but you, a couple other people, and this group of men. And what they've been doing is giving their icebreaker speeches. Yesterday they had 4 icebreaker speeches. Last week they had 5. The week before they had 3. And these men get up and they talk about what brought them there in their icebreaker speech. Now think about what there is, and think about what it takes to speak about what brought a person to that place. And I am so humbled and amazed by these men who are able to get up without defenses, without rationalizations, without justifications, and talk not in grisly detail or excruciating things, but obviously about extremely difficult and painful things. One man yesterday talked about how it has been 15 years since either one of his children has spoken to him, and they resolved, because of what he had done, never to speak to him again. And he was able to share that. And when I saw that, I thought, I wish I had the courage to share something as deep, as intimate, as much about myself as he does. And it helped me realize how many of my own masks that I have when I communicate. And even now, as I struggle to take off some of these masks and show you who I am, I'm struck with how hard that is. And how for every mask I take off, there's another one underneath. And when I take that off, there's yet another one. And so the process of communication, the process of Toastmasters, the process of moving through one's own barriers is one of removing these masks, one at a time, and ultimately trying and hoping and praying that someday I may be able to reveal a little more clearly to you, and maybe to myself, who that person inside really is. And so what is communication? Communication is revealing who we are and allowing someone else to be there with that person. To be an I and a thou, whether with another individual or with a group. So that's what Toastmasters is about. That's what communication is about. So tell me who you are. I'm a Toastmaster.